On a cracked stretch of pavement outside Birmingham, Alabama, a black man in his early 50s stood in front of a brick warehouse with a caved-in roof. The front door was chained shut with a rusted padlock. Half the windows were boarded, the rest were broken. A pigeon flew out of one of the broken windows and disappeared over the railroad tracks behind the building. The county condemned the warehouse 8 years ago. The city tried to auction it twice, and nobody bid either time. The building had been used as a tool storage facility for a textile mill back in the 1960s, then abandoned, briefly squatted in, and finally forgotten. The city was getting ready to demolish it at the end of the quarter. The lot it sat on was worth more than the building. The auctioneer told him the minimum bid was $300, cash only, no inspections, no warranties, as is. The man pulled a manila envelope out of the inside pocket of his jacket. Inside the envelope was $312 in 20s, 5s, and 1s, held together with a rubber band. He counted it out on the hood of the auctioneer's truck, twice. The auctioneer watched him. Then he asked if he was sure. The man nodded. He signed the paperwork on the same hood, using a pen the auctioneer handed him. The deed was transferred to him that afternoon. His name is Marcus Bell. He served 2 tours in Iraq with the United States Army between 2004 and 2009. What he did with that warehouse over the next 19 months started showing up on the local news in Alabama, then on national news, then on veterans forums in 3 different countries. But to understand why a condemned brick building mattered so much, you have to understand where Marcus was sleeping the night before he bought it. For 2 years and 4 months, Marcus had been sleeping in the breezeway behind a 24-hour laundromat on the south side of Birmingham. The breezeway had a metal awning that kept the rain off. There was a vending machine that hummed all night and gave off just enough heat in the winter to keep his hands from going numb. The laundromat manager, a woman named Patricia, knew he was there. She never said anything. Some nights she left a folded blanket on top of the dryer closest to the back door. Marcus had not always been homeless. After he came back from his second tour, he worked as a forklift operator at a distribution center outside Tuscaloosa for almost 6 years. He was good at it. He could read a load chart. He could stack pallets 14 high without scraping the ceiling. He had a small apartment, a used Chevy truck, and a routine. He worked 12-hour shifts and he slept 8 hours, and he did not think about Fallujah if he could help it. Then the panic attacks started, then the nightmares, then the drinking, then the missed shifts. The distribution center let him go in 2017. The VA put him on a waiting list for counseling that was 11 months long. By the time his name came up, he had already lost the apartment and the truck and most of the people who had once answered his calls. The shelters in Birmingham had rules that did not work for him. He could not sleep with strangers in the same room. He could not sleep with the lights on. He could not sleep if he could not see the door. The first night he tried a shelter, he woke up at 2 a.m. with his hands around another man's throat because the man had touched his shoulder to wake him for breakfast. Marcus never went back to a shelter again. He chose the breezeway because behind the laundromat, at least he could see who was coming. Every morning at 6, Marcus walked 4 miles to a temp agency on 3rd Avenue. They sent men to construction sites, to warehouses, to landscaping crews, to whatever needed bodies that day. Some days he worked 12 hours. Some days he stood in the parking lot until noon and walked back to the breezeway with nothing. On the days he worked, he took the cash and split it 3 ways. 1/3 for food, 1/3 for his daughter's birthday, which he was already saving, for even though it was 8 months away, and 1/3 went into a coffee can buried under a loose piece of concrete in the breezeway floor. He never told anyone what the coffee can was for. He was not sure himself for a long time. He just knew that men who came back from war needed somewhere to put themselves down at night, somewhere quiet, somewhere where the door locked from the inside and nobody touched your shoulder while you slept. That coffee can is what he counted out on the auctioneer's truck. The first night Marcus slept inside his warehouse, he did not sleep at all. He sat on a folded section of cardboard in the middle of the concrete floor and watched the moonlight come through the broken windows. The roof had caved in over the east corner of the building. Water had been pooling there for years, and the concrete underneath was stained black. The whole place smelled like wet plaster, pigeon droppings, and something faintly chemical from whatever the textile mill had stored there 40 years ago. But it was his. The door, even broken, was his. The walls, even cracked, were his. He made a decision that night. He was not going to be a man who lived alone in a condemned warehouse. He was going to turn this warehouse into the place he had needed 2 years ago and never found. He had no contracting license. He had no construction experience beyond stacking pallets. He had no money for materials. What he had was an Army-issued multi-tool he had carried through both tours, a temp agency that would give him work 3 or 4 days a week, and a brick building that nobody else wanted. The next morning, Marcus started clearing debris. The first month was demolition. He hauled out 40 years of accumulated junk, one wheelbarrow at a time, using a wheelbarrow he found behind a hardware store with a flat tire he patched with bicycle inner tubes, rotted wooden shelving, rusted metal racks, a pile of moldy fabric scraps from the old textile operation, pigeon nests, glass from the broken windows. He sorted as he went. Metal went into one pile for scrap. Wood went into another pile for reuse. Trash went into bags he hauled to a dumpster behind a strip mall 2 blocks over. The scrap metal alone got him $180 over 4 weeks. He put every dollar back into the building. The second month was the roof. The east corner was the worst part. He could not afford a contractor, and he could not climb up there safely alone. So he walked to a roofing supply yard on Vanderbilt Road and asked the foreman if he could trade labor for materials. The foreman, a Vietnam veteran named Rick Holloway, looked at him for a long time before he answered. Then he asked Marcus what unit he had served with. Marcus told him. Rick asked when he had last had a hot meal. Marcus did not answer. Rick gave him a job that afternoon, paid in cash and materials. For 6 weeks, Marcus worked on the supply yard's loading crew in the mornings and on his own roof in the afternoons. Rick sent 2 of his men over on a Saturday to help him patch the east corner. They did it in 1 day. They would not take any money. Rick said the materials were a write-off and the labor was a debt he had owed somebody else for 30 years. By the end of the second month, the warehouse had a roof that did not leak. The third month was insulation and walls. Marcus walked Birmingham looking for demolition sites. He found one on the west side where a school was being torn down to make way for a parking lot. He offered the demolition crew his time in exchange for whatever materials he could carry out. They let him take cinder blocks, sheets of drywall, insulation batting, and 140 feet of copper wire he pulled out of the walls himself. He hauled everything back to the warehouse on a borrowed flatbed cart, 3 trips a day for 2 weeks. He walked past neighborhoods he had grown up in. He walked past the recruiting office where he had signed his enlistment papers in 2003. He walked past the bus stop where he had said goodbye to his mother before basic training. She had been dead for 7 years by then. By the end of month 3, the warehouse had interior walls, 8 private sleeping rooms, each one with a real door that locked from the inside. The 4th month was beds. Marcus could not afford new mattresses, and he would not give another veteran something he had pulled out of a dumpster, so he made calls. He walked into the Birmingham VFW post on a Tuesday afternoon and asked if anyone there could help. He told the man at the desk what he was trying to build. The man at the desk made 1 phone call, then another, then a third. Within 2 weeks, 8 new mattresses were delivered to the warehouse on the back of a pickup truck. A retired Marine named Eddie Sanchez had driven them down from Huntsville. He had bought them himself from a wholesale supplier. He would not take any payment. He stayed for coffee on the cardboard Marcus was still using as a chair. He shook Marcus's hand before he left and said his son had served in Afghanistan and had come home and had not made it through his first year back. He said this was the closest thing to a thank you he had ever been able to give anyone. The 5th month was water and power. This was the hardest part. The warehouse had been disconnected from city utilities for over a decade. Reconnection required permits, inspections, and fees Marcus could not afford, so he found another way. A retired civil engineer named Howard Whitfield had read about Marcus in the Birmingham News in a small article that ran on page 9. He drove out to the warehouse on a Saturday morning with a thermos of coffee and a clipboard. He spent 4 hours walking the building. Then he told Marcus that everything he wanted to do was possible, but it had to be done right, or the city would shut it down before it ever opened. Howard came back every weekend for 3 months. He drew up blueprints by hand on a kitchen table. He helped Marcus apply for permits and grants. He introduced him to a state representative who knew a nonprofit director who knew a foundation officer in Atlanta. The foundation in Atlanta wrote Marcus a grant for $48,000 to bring the building up to code. Howard would not take a dollar for any of his work. He said his brother had come back from Vietnam in 1971 and had spent the rest of his life looking for somewhere quiet to sit down. By the end of the 9th month, the warehouse had running water, working electricity, 2 functioning bathrooms with hot showers, and a small communal kitchen with a donated refrigerator and a propane stove. The first veteran who slept inside the warehouse was a man named Calvin Pierce, who had served in the Marines in 1990 and 1991 and had been sleeping in his truck behind a Walmart for 14 months. Marcus met him at the same temporary agency where he had been getting his own day labor jobs. Calvin had a cane, a duffel bag, and a wedding ring he still wore even though his wife had passed in 2019. Marcus brought him back to the warehouse that night. He showed him to one of the 8 rooms. He showed him how the lock worked. He showed him where the bathroom was, where the kitchen was, and where to put his bag. Then he closed the door and left him alone, because that was the thing Marcus had needed 2 years earlier and had never been given, to be left alone behind a door that was locked. Calvin slept for 14 hours straight. When he came out the next morning, he did not say anything. He just sat at the small wooden table in the kitchen and drank the coffee Marcus had made. Tears ran down his face the whole time. Marcus did not say anything either. He just sat across from him and drank his own coffee. That was the moment, Marcus says, when he stopped being homeless. Not when he bought the warehouse, not when he moved in, not when the lights came on. The moment another veteran slept 14 hours behind a door that locked. By month 12, all 8 rooms were full. The local news in Birmingham picked up the story almost by accident. A reporter named Denise Whitlow was working on a piece about a city council vote on homeless services. Someone at the VFW Post mentioned that there was a veteran on the South Side who had bought a condemned warehouse for $300 and turned it into a shelter. She drove out on a Thursday afternoon. Denise spent 6 hours at the warehouse that day. She talked to Marcus. She talked to Calvin. She talked to 2 other veterans who had moved in by then. Marcus made her a cup of coffee on the propane stove. He showed her the room he slept in, which was the smallest one, the one closest to the front door, because he wanted to be the first one any new arrival saw. The story ran on a Sunday evening. By Tuesday morning, it had been picked up by the National Wire. By Friday, Marcus had received messages from 23 different states and 4 other countries. A construction company in Nashville offered to send a crew to expand the building for free. A veterans organization in Texas asked if they could fly him out to consult on a similar project in San Antonio. Marcus turned down the trip to Texas. He said he was not finished in Birmingham. What Marcus did next is the part of the story most people do not know. He started a Saturday morning program at the warehouse, open to any veteran in the city who needed a meal, a shower, a place to do laundry, or somewhere to sit down for an hour. No paperwork, no questions, no sign-in sheet. The grant money paid for the food. Volunteers from the VFW post and 3 local churches handled the cooking. Rick Holloway from the roofing supply yard showed up every Saturday with his crew and worked on whatever needed fixing. In the first year, more than 400 veterans walked through the front door of that warehouse on a Saturday. Some of them came once, some of them came every week. Some of them ended up sleeping in one of the 8 rooms when a spot opened up. Marcus kept a small notebook on the kitchen counter where any veteran who came through could write their name, their unit, and where they had served. By the end of the first year, the notebook had 368 names in it. Marcus has now helped open 2 more buildings in Alabama, both of them in towns smaller than Birmingham, both of them using the same model. Condemned buildings nobody wanted, veterans who needed somewhere quiet, doors that locked from the inside. The 3rd building opened last spring, and it has 12 rooms instead of 8. Marcus still sleeps in the smallest room at the original warehouse, the one closest to the front door. He has a real bed now and a real desk and a small framed photograph of his daughter on the wall above the desk. She is grown now. She came down from Atlanta to see the warehouse 2 months after the news story ran. She had not seen him in 5 years. They sat in the kitchen and drank coffee and did not say much. She comes down once a month now. Someone asked Marcus recently if he ever thinks about the man who used to sleep behind the laundromat, the man with the coffee can buried under the loose concrete. Marcus said he thinks about him every day. He said that man was not weaker than him. He said that man was the same man with the same hands and the same training and the same heart. The only thing that man was missing was a door that locked from the inside. Marcus says the warehouse did not save him. He saved himself. But the warehouse, that condemned, leaking, pigeon-infested brick building that was scheduled to be demolished, gave him somewhere to put the work. And sometimes somewhere to put the work is the only thing standing between a man and the rest of his life. If this story moved you, hit subscribe. We tell stories every week about people who built something out of nothing. The next one might be the story of someone you know.